Hello everybody, November 11th, 2022. Quite an eventful week we saw in Bitcoin. Let's go over what I said on Monday. Last Friday, we're approaching the top. I was warning of a pullback coming. On Monday, I even warned members that I was selling, a lot of my spot positions, raising cash, because we saw then a nice big dump after that. So as of Monday, we still had the possibility of this bullish scenario here, but the key was staying above 18,550, and ideally it holds a little bit above that. So obviously that did not happen. We broke 18,550, and so we went into this scenario. If it breaks 18,550, we're going to head down to sub 17.8. That's what I was waiting for previously. And then unfortunately, for the larger picture to remain bullish, it needed to hold 15.7. So it hit, I think, 15,750 or something. So I don't really consider that holding. It is holding 15.7 technically, but like the fact that it even got there is pretty darn bad for the bullish scenario. It went down, it went down even lower, 15,583. Okay, so it went to 15.6. So technically it did break 15.7. Now, after that, it bounced pretty nicely. In the long run, if this somehow makes its way upwards, I suppose I'll have to consider that as holding 15.7, but I really don't like the fact that it touched it. And so my long-term view on Bitcoin is now much less bullish, or much less convinced about a bullish outcome. Breaking that level really does open up the possibility that we're going to see a prolonged bear market. We've already been in a bear market for a year, but breaking that level says we might have more to come, which would really be unfortunate. So anyway, as the week progressed, we saw some crazy action, right? I had raised cash on Monday, somewhere in this area here, and then I put some cash back in when we were dumping here, and then it started pumping. I was thinking, oh good, that was a good call, right? And then we saw that immediate dump, and I just got out. I got out not only of the new buys that I did there, but I got out of everything. So I dumped 100% of my positions right there when I saw that candle. And obviously that worked out very, very well because we saw some extreme dumping from there. So then as the action progressed, I identified this area right here as the likely place for this to bounce, to reach a bottom. And so I bought again. Went all back in. So all out here, all in here. And that worked out really nicely. We saw over the course of the next day some really nice pumping. Was hoping that was going to turn into an impulsive move. It did not. In the end, it turned out to just be 3 waves up. So again, when that impulse broke right around here, that was last night, I once again sent a notice out to members, I'm going back to cash. So between this and altcoins that I was in, I walked away with a profit of, 15% or something on my portfolio just within a day. So, I'm not complaining about it, but it's certainly annoying action. So in any case, I'm back to cash, 100% cash now, and just waiting for this to clarify, basically. So the good news for bulls right now is that the bears have been unable to follow through, just as the bulls were unable to follow through. We've got 3 waves up. So far, we've got 3 waves down, and we've seen no follow through. Doesn't mean we're not going to see follow through to the downside. It just means as of right now, they've been unable to follow through. So it is, for the moment, a possibility that the bulls push this higher at some point. I don't know exactly where that bounce is going to happen. It could easily make a new low, kind of break below that to take out stops and then go upwards. that part is unclear where exactly that might happen, but anywhere in this box is reasonable for a C wave. So I think the best case scenario that we have is that for the bulls, this is in red now, my red count here, that's our 1, ABC and 1, ABC and 2. We need to see ABC for 3. And you can see I've got my orange count here. That could just be a Y wave. It could be W, X, Y, and then new lows. So the bulls still have their work cut out for them. Even if they get it up here to 19Ks, they would then need to see a corrective pullback hold for 4 and then move up for 5, right? And that would give us 5 waves in a diagonal. I think I've made my position on diagonals quite clear over the years, that they're unreliable structures, and you can see this is the most recent example right here. We could have considered that 5 waves up in a diagonal, and that's why I was giving the slight edge to the bulls on this breakdown. But obviously it failed, right? And so even if this makes 5 waves up in a diagonal, it can still fail. It would be the only way that I see right now for the bulls to have any chance at all is to do all 5 waves. Then they have to hold a 3-wave pullback and then form hopefully a new impulse. I mean, you can start an impulsive move with a diagonal, and maybe that isn't a surprise after all the bearish action that we've seen, that we would get something like this. But realistically, after that, in order to be confident in a bottom, I would absolutely need to see a new impulsive move. That would have to be an impulse before I would consider going back in on the next pullback, and then we can start going upwards for real. But again, the warning sign of breaking 15.7 is kind of blaring in my ears, and so I'm expecting lower, honestly. It may happen sooner rather than later. We're going into a weekend. The PPO is starting to get back into the kind of warning territory here, which is not a good sign. Obviously for the bulls to kind of capitalize, when this turns green like this, they really need to capitalize on it and get the movement upwards. Otherwise, as it starts turning orange again like this, you can see more dumping. So that's kind of where we are right now. As far as indicators go, it's not looking promising. There's not really much room for this to run. So the only way that the bulls probably could do anything would be if this just kind of goes sideways for a while or dumps to a slightly lower low and allows this to reset, then maybe they can try again. But as of right now, I think it is very, very wise to play it safe and be sitting in as much cash as you can, and just watching from the sidelines, because this action is not promising. Even though there's a bullish possibility, it's by no means guaranteed, and it can absolutely just continue downwards. So the question is, where will it go if it does continue downwards? And I'm going to pull back to the daily chart to try to answer that question. So we were hoping for this to be 5 waves down in a C wave of 4, and it still could be. It's just not impulsive any longer. The greater chart, the larger chart, no longer impulsive because of that 15.7 break. So the best chance that the bulls have for another high is in the form of a diagonal, which is just much, much harder to track. And it's not exactly clear where that bottom might form. But the other problem is this really doesn't look like an impulsive 5 waves down either. So, trying to figure out where exactly this 5th wave should end is going to be tricky. But if it were an impulse, the way I would figure it out would be like this. And so that gives me a box here between the 1236 and the 1382. Between 12,195 and 14,114. I think if we break down, if we see continued breakdown, that's the next possible place to find a bounce. And if I extend this box this way, you can see it's a pretty reasonable place to expect a bounce as well, just based on horizontals. We've got, previous resistance here, previous resistance here, that as of yet has been untested. And so for it to come down and test that resistance and find a bottom there is a chance that the bulls could then still push up. Maybe not to that target that we had, but at least for one more high. And it's likely going to take the shape of 3 waves instead of 5 being the last one here. So, it can be very, very volatile and do something like that. So anyway, that part is not clear yet, and there's no guarantee that this does hold. I'm just saying it is a possibility that that region would hold based on the target for a 5th wave, if we could consider this impulsive, which again I have an issue with, but if that could be impulsive, that would be the target for 5, and it overlaps nicely with that horizontal support zone there. In addition to that, we are just ridiculously oversold on the daily chart as far as RSI goes and PPO goes. We are now getting down very, very low. In addition to that, my top and bottom finder chart, which I've shared before, is clearly in the buy zone as well, on the weekly and the daily. So I probably am going to try to buy again. If we get to that region, 12 to 14, I would consider it a pretty good risk reward area to buy. Just spot buying, and be ready to bail if it starts doing something more bearish. But I think we're going to get a bounce of some sort from there. Even if that bounce is just corrective, it'll likely be a pretty decent corrective bounce, because that would be 5 waves down, and this would be the bearish interpretation. The larger bearish interpretation is that that's 5 waves down. We'd get a pretty decent pullback from there to about 382 to 618-ish. So that's like 25K to 38K. We could actually bounce anywhere in that region. So, significant gains can be made even if it's a bear market bounce. And that's kind of what I'm looking at as far as buying there. If I decide to buy there, probably get a decent bounce from there, because that would then, in the bearish case, that would be 1 and 2, and then we would actually potentially start a much larger wave downwards in the 3rd wave down. And it's the way that this bounce forms would likely tell us, are we to expect a new wave down, or are we actually starting the 5th wave up that we should be seeing? Because as it stands currently, I still don't see 5 waves up in this macro chart. And so even though it's diagonal and it's broken this warning sign, I kind of expect one more wave up still, just based on that. But the need for that 5th wave. But we're just gonna have to wait and see. So we'll watch the action this weekend, see what comes, and we'll go from there. Like I said, 12 to 14 may not be a bad area to buy, even if we do just get a corrective bounce from it. It's likely to be pretty large. So, alrighty, guys, I will talk to you all on Monday, and we'll see if we have any more action to report on at that time. See if we have anything a little bit more concrete. But at the moment, I would highly recommend staying safe, deleveraging, and raising cash if you haven't already. All right, everybody, have a good weekend. I'll talk to you on Monday.